This podcast was created as a part of Podcast Lab by India Film Project in association with Anchor by Spotify.
Imagine a blank, white space. Imagine standing on an infinite grid of squares. There's nothing around you. No color but black and white, and your multi hued articles of clothing stand awkwardly against the backdrop of blinding white. You take a couple of steps forward. You can't see walls, but your footsteps echo against something. After walking for a bit on what felt like virtual plastic tiles, your right foot suddenly sinks an inch deep into the ground. You lift it up to see mud on the soles of your shoe. And there's mud before you as well. How could you have missed it? This looks so obvious. You step away from the soil and water, wondering where you are and how you got here. When suddenly, a small leaf sprouts where your foot had been moments back. The growth is phenomenally fast, almost like a sped up video. The leaf unfolds and the stem continues to shoot up. More branches and leaves form. The stem is 3 feet tall, then 4, then 6. Within seconds, what was once just a blank and boring square is now a majestic 12-foot tall tree. And a blue monkey suddenly peeps out from within the foliage. What are you gonna do? Hi, I'm Samay, and I'm a game master for Dungeons and Dragons, or D&D for short. That's what I do for my hobby. What I introduced you to right now was just generally how I start my games. I do a bit of narration, and then we jump right into it. But at the moment, I want to mention something. I want to mention what Dungeons and Dragons means to me. For me, D&D is synonymous with storytelling, and which is why I'm talking about it today. D&D and storytelling for me go hand in hand. And if I were to put it simply, about why I fell in love with D&D as an art form, I guess it's because I like logic and I like hosting get-togethers. And D&D is a little bit of both. I mean, of course, I'll explain that a bit more as we go along. But it allows me to sort of structure worlds and structure stories and really make people have a good time through that. I get a chance to sit together with my friends and explore tales and quests and journeys that may never have happened if I hadn't put the time in, if I hadn't gotten together with some random people, a bunch of weirdos, people with my set of quirks and whatnots. And I think D&D has literally been the most obvious form of escapism in my life. Me personally, I've also had a bout with anxiety growing up, and I think when I finally discovered this hobby about 1.5 to 2 years back, it just felt so obvious. It felt like my entire life I was inching towards this. Somehow, all the random nonsense that I was reading on the internet about, let's say, a did you know fact about tigers eating grass when their stomachs are upset. I mean, what a stupid thing to know. But suddenly, now in my D&D game, I have a tiger roaming around eating grass. And that becomes a prompt. It becomes almost educational for me to tell you this and you to find out about that fact through me. It's a very multifaceted engagement for me. And it's just a chance for me to run wild with my imagination and create the worlds and welcome other people into it.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Closet Writer Chronicles. I'm your host Sangeeta, aka the Moody Marshmallow. You just heard our guest for today, Samay Soni. Samay has a background in mechanical engineering and has gone on to work with companies like Tech Mahindra, KPMG and PwC. He is currently pursuing his MBA from the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. Samay is also an ardent fan of poetry, psychology, and the fantasy tabletop game Dungeons and Dragons. We'll be talking more about D&D, what engineering has been like for him, and the ever-growing community of poets online. Welcome to the Closet Writer Chronicles this week, guys. We have Samay, Soni. We're going to be talking about Dungeons and Dragons and poetry, storytelling, and a bunch of other things. First off, I have to mention one of the reasons I wanted to talk to Samay was because of Dungeons and Dragons, but also he is interesting to talk to otherwise. I am mentioning this, otherwise he's very sensitive. Caveat to the audience, Samay and I have known each other since school, so you might experience a bit of banter. Also, if you hear a few dad jokes here and there, you'll either enjoy it or you'll roll your eyes, but this is a caveat nonetheless. But anyway, welcome to the show, Samay. It's really good to have you here.
Oh, I'm just saying, like, in the earlier take, I was called uninteresting. So thank you for the revision. Yeah.
You're welcome. But no, I think just on a serious note, I know you've been playing Dungeons and Dragons, I think just before the pandemic hit and before lockdown happened and whatnot. I think you got really into it during that period because I have heard you talk about it on various platforms. On Instagram, I've seen you posting, or even I think Clubhouse, we've had discussions on storytelling about this where you've spoken about it. I think, just to kind of bring it to the basics, what is Dungeons and Dragons? Because my first memory of even hearing about this game was through the sitcom The Big Bang Theory, and I thought it was completely fictional. I thought it was a made up game, and then I realized that, oh, this is an actual game that's played world over. There's an actual community and it's growing. So I was really amazed, and honestly, I don't know too much about it. So how would you explain the game to someone who doesn't know what Dungeons and Dragons is?
So I think first off, before I comment on the game, I'm going to talk about the community itself. D&D is a pretty obsessive community. A lot of people generally um, dive into the game with both hands and feet. And D&D, I think, holds a special place in everyone's heart. So I think everyone has their own personal relationship with the game, and for different reasons, for different personal reasons, it means a lot to different people. Everyone sort of tends to find their own meaning in the game because it's that flexible in its definition. But in general, how you play the game is that you have a bunch of people that get together and just tell a story together, right? If I were to sum up D&D, it's basically a collaborative storytelling experience in a social environment, which is a pretty heavy thing to say. So I'll break down what I mean by that, which is basically you and let's say a bunch of people, 4 to 5 friends will get together, sit at a table,
Right.
and among 6 of you, there will be one dungeon master who will be running the game, who will be deciding the plot. He's basically put the work in, done the notes, so he or she has already created the world, and you, the players, will interact with it.
Okay.
Right? So let's say I'm a master, and let's say I give you just like in the intro. Let's say I give you another premise, something to build on, right? So let's say I put you, the players, in a room, and I say that, okay, so you guys are all locked in a room, and this is a classic scenario. Suddenly, the room is filling with water,
Okay.
and you wake up in like halfway through the room filling up, and you realize that all of you are sort of sitting on these chairs, your backs facing each other. For the 4 of you, let's say, are at the center of the room, and you try and get up, but you're chained to the chairs. And suddenly I tell you what you want to do because the room's filling up. You have to decide now.
Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna pull on the chairs, see if the links are weak, and I'd be like, I don't know, maybe they are, maybe they aren't. Okay, I might just ask you to roll the dice and see if that works out. Just involving a bit of chance and uncertainty, and putting a bit of objectivity in how the game proceeds. Right? Then somebody else might come up with something unique, like, okay, I want to check my pockets, see if I have a key in it. Right?
Okay.
So people respond to the same plot in different ways. The dungeon master just builds the world and the plot, but the solution and the response to that plot comes from the players, and that's why every iteration of the same plot also gets very, very unique and very customized to who's playing it.
Right. Okay. No, that's interesting. It's almost like, I guess, a live novel that's being written out, I guess, in front of you. That's honestly what it sounds like. And you can correct me if I'm wrong about it, but that's really how it's almost like you have someone who's sort of narrating the plot, and the players just have to go along with whatever's being told to them. And I guess you can find your options from within whatever's being told to you. I think that's my basic understanding. I'm not sure if I got it correct, but
No, that is correct. Yeah.
D&D community, please don't come at me. But yeah.
That's really accurate. I mean, see, the thing is, when you're reading a book, it's just one person writing the entire story, right?
Right.
But when it's 5, 6 people getting together, the story could take any form. You don't know what the ending, covering it together, right? That's where the customized version of the whole D&D part comes into play. But it is sort of like reading a book. I mean, if you were to say that books are synonymous with telling a story,
Right.
and I'd say that, generally speaking, that's really on point. I think it's kind of like jumping into a new world, and D&D is very prevalent in the real life. I don't know if people generally know this, because if you were part of the community, you pick up on these things. Like, for example, the Game of Thrones map, right, for the TV show, right? That was built, the one that you see in the TV show in the starting, right? So that was done by a professional map maker who makes a lot of maps for D&D, for like different.
I didn't know this.
Involved. A lot of these TV shows, a lot of these movies, a lot of these ideas sort of are born. They stem from people who played D&D before, people who've written down plots, and then they're like, oh, this is really cool. I'm going to take this back to my work and maybe build on this.
Oh wow, that's amazing. I had no idea, honestly. But so I know you used to be majorly into poetry, and we'll get into that. But I'm curious to know, how did you get into Dungeons and Dragons? How did you get so involved in it, and what is the D&D community like?
I think it's pretty random how I got in, because generally I have about 200 to 300 tabs open at any given point on my phone. Because you have that habit of opening a link up and like, oh, this looks interesting, I'm going to read about this, just not right now because I don't have the time, and then you save it and never get back to it, right? So one of those tabs was D&D for me. I don't know where. It might have been on a show somewhere. I think maybe I was watching Stranger Things, but I don't know if that timeline is right. I might have picked it up before that also, but someday that phrase just popped up in my head.
Okay.
So I went and I googled it, and I opened the link up, saw the Wikipedia page for it, and I remember I was in Kolkata at the time. I was in PWC, and I didn't have any work at that point on that day, so I was reading about it, and it was very impersonal. Like, the words that were flying off the page didn't really have any significance for me. They didn't mean anything to me. I mean, fine, there was a game, it was a tabletop game, whatever that means, right? A few weeks after that, suddenly one of my really close friends from college, like my roommate from college, Sanjay, I was on a call with him, and he just suddenly mentioned, oh, by the way, I'm getting into D&D. It's in Mumbai is a pretty active scene for Dungeons and Dragons. There's a lot of people getting together over here in cafes, and their communities being formed. And I'm like, I was just checking the game out. Oh my god, there was some kind of subliminal messaging through some TV show that we may have commonly watched. I'm sure that was suggested to us that, oh, that's something that exists, and we might have both picked up on it, and we just don't know.
Right.
Haven't realized. But when he said that, I just started like checking the game out a little more. I saw YouTube videos, and I started getting into the game from the side of a dungeon master, because I mean, I wanted to play, and my and Sanjay, he also wanted to join my group, and we were looking for people, but we needed at least one dungeon master. So I was like, you know what, I'll do it.
Right. Okay. And the community,
I'd say that it's kind of it's a mini world in itself, right?
Yeah.
And just like you have 7 billion people overall, or 7.2, whatever number we're at right now. Similarly, you have all different shapes and sizes of personalities who are part of this group. You have dads and moms and school teachers and kids and college goers like me, and professionals and non-professionals, and big and small, and young and old. You have a lot of people from different facets of life who are sort of engaging with the game either temporarily or more in the long term.
Right.
I was reading this Reddit post about this one person who was a community worker, and he used to go to an old age home and he used to run a game for these guys, and that was apparently the highlight of the day for these people, right? So 4 or 5 people at the old age home would just get together with him and he'd run the game, and it would be chaos because some people were struggling with dementia, and it was hard for them to keep up with a game that's so demanding of your imagination and your mental faculties. But it's just more about getting together and having fun, as long as your group together socially, and that's why it's such a social game. I think it's all about that, right? So the community sort of offers you that perspective that this game really defines itself differently for different people, and because it has such a wide ranging application and how people pursue it, that's where the personalities um, get into that community, right? But I think the one thing that binds us all together is our love for the game.
Right. And that's important. I think that's the basis for any community, right? Like, I think this common love for something. It's like, again, please don't give me hate, listeners, but it's like, I guess, the common love for like K-pop or like anime or whatever. I love anime, just putting that out there. But yeah, I think it's in a way, it's kind of like that. Um,
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like you find something common with people to connect on. I mean, let's say you're into train spotting and you're really into like I barely know what the hobby is, but I was sort of introduced to it by Sheldon Cooper, and I'm like, fine, but trains, sure. And suddenly you have a bunch of people across the world, on the internet who are connecting with you about trains, and your strangely unique passion for trains. And I don't want to say strange in the sense that it's weird, but more like strange in the sense that it's uncommon, because not everyone gets into that same hobby, right? Because we live in such a interesting part of the timeline that we are able to access so many people so suddenly, so immediately, that if you want to connect with people who have the same passions as you, all you got to do is just go online.
That's true.
Right?
That is, yeah, very true.
Yeah.
I think online today you have so many spaces to connect for different things. Even for podcasts, I think it's amazing the kind of groups that are there online. So many online communities to talk about podcasting or shows. If even for things like say cooking or even reading, I think I found a lot of like good book clubs online, which have been amazing. But no, I think it's so cool that you're a part of a community like this. And it's definitely, I think it's like, I didn't realize how big a deal it was, especially I think now in India also, the way it's picking up. I guess pivoting into the mental health realm, so to speak. I know you also mentioned anxiety in your introduction. I'm not sure if that's something you'd be comfortable to talk about, but what has, yeah, but what has your experience been like with this? The reason, again, I'm asking this question is because it's important to have these conversations. And I think the more openly people have these conversations, it becomes more accepted. And I think there's a sort of resonance also with people that, oh, I'm not the only one who's going through something like this. There are other people, and it's possible to still kind of get through it and live well despite it. So yeah, if you can talk about your experience with anxiety, that would be great.
I think I'd say that I have zero reservations about talking about my anxiety. I think
Okay.
I think something that I'm very open about, especially because of my relationship with it. I just find it super irritating that I have anxiety, because I'm like, oh, I mean, life would be so much better without it.
Right.
But I have it, and it's just, uh, and I do see myself as someone who is generally brazenly confident once I know where I am and what I'm doing. That's just how I live. But for people, it's very paradoxical to see someone like me talk about anxiety when I say that I'm confident in life, or rather that I'd like to be, and I've taken measured but definitive steps towards realizing that part of my personality, where I'm really growing as a person who's more confident in their own skin. But that has nothing to do with anxiety. Anxiety is just, for me, I mean, just as overthinking something. For some reason, I'll get a feeling, it'll be weird, sort of a pit in my stomach, which is not really, I mean, it's just, the proverb doesn't do it justice, because you really have to feel it to know it. And for someone who's even had like a small like panic attack, or like a small anxiety attack, or some kind of like anxious feeling, some sort of like nervousness, which has underlying tones of dread. Right? They know what I'm talking about, but you really have to experience it at least once to know what it might feel like. Extrapolating that, what it might feel like to live with it, right? And when I say that, like, for example, if I were to give an example, let's say that anxiety is very obstructive and inhibitive, uh, unless you're actively working against it. Because if I were to give an example of my professional journey, I'm in an MBA program right now, and getting here was super hard. And I know what hell I went through to deal with, scrutinize my past, to bring up my achievements, to be able to talk about it in a way, in the capacity of a salesperson, somehow pitching myself to people who I consider morons. Because let's face it, if you're admissions committee, you're not like the creme de la creme. Okay, so
Right.
convincing me I'm worth it, and I know that I'm worth it. I'm like, I know that I mean, I'm not gonna be modest here. I know that I'm Yale material. Like, I know it. It's just I'm a late bloomer, and
Right.
the way these committee work, they sort of they need past achievements
Right.
to get there, and I didn't want to waste my life just getting the program for me, the program for myself. But
Right.
I knew that I felt somehow entitled to at least one of the top programs in the world,
Hmm.
was big, massive source of anxiety for me. And for 5 years, it was just me jumping from job to job, getting the right thing, trying to do extra work. I've never known anything but 120-hour work weeks, whether it was self-inflicted or otherwise, because there's always this capitalistic panic of, oh, am I doing enough? Right?
Right. Right.
It's always pushing you unnecessarily. There's no healthy balance, and I mean, anxiety manifests in different ways for different people. But
Yeah.
I think people should know that, you know it's very common. It's
True. Yeah, no, that's true. Because I relate to it. I mean, I've never been clinically diagnosed per se, but I know I do go through bouts of social anxiety. So there have been instances where, if I've had to go out for something and I'll just cancel last minute because I'm just suddenly I get extremely overwhelmed and I'm like, no, I don't want to go, and I just cancel. And initially I didn't realize it could actually be an issue. And I remember attending this session on someone was taking on social anxiety, and they were talking about different symptoms that, oh, like canceling plans last minute, or sort of leaving a place early, like leaving a party early or something, or just getting really drained out, or like, and they were seemingly common symptoms, but they were still very specific. And I was like, oh my god, I relate to this. And I remember I went and spoke to this counselor later, and I was like, I've kind of gone through like a bunch of these. And she's like, yeah, you possibly had maybe a milder case of it. It's obviously it's easier to overcome, but only once you acknowledge and realize that, oh, there is possibly an issue, and you sort of accept and kind of start dealing with it. So yeah, no, I completely get that. And it's like you said, because it's very easy for people to judge, also to look at you and say like, oh no, how do you have anxiety? Oh no, how are you depressed? Everything's going so well for you. It's all like, flowers and ponies. So nothing can go wrong. And I'm like, no, you don't see the dark clouds over me. But yeah, no, I completely resonate with that. I think we diverged or digressed a lot on this one topic, but I'm glad we had this conversation. I think it's an important one. And yeah, to people listening,
if I could sort of like tie ends together, I have I have people in my games, in my world, the longer term game that I'm running for my group, my main group, right? I have people over there who have anxiety issues. I have people who have depression in my game. My
right.
NPCs, who are the non-playable characters, who are the people that my players meet,
Hmm.
which is all the NPCs are me. I'm the one acting on everyone, right? But I sort of try and like give a lot of different dimensions for NPCs, and the quickest way for me to like do that is to empathize with how they generally would be in life, right? So some people are very authoritative, some people are so and so. I mean, but I was running out of personality types until I realized that, it's not representative of a real life society unless you give people some sort of mental health issues, and you
That's true.
explore that side of people, right? So I have those in my game who also have anxiety issues, and in fact, I think I relate to those characters very hard.
Yeah, no, and it's important, like you said, because the truth is, I think most people today have some form of a mental health issue, whether it's mild, moderate, extreme, whatever it is, it's there. And it's important we talk about it. So, yeah, I mean, guys, if you have, again, as I always say on this show, if you have an issue, please reach out. There is no shame, there is no stigma. Talk about it, accept it. Please go out and seek help. You will get through it. You really will. So, yeah, I think that was a fairly heavy discussion, but a much needed one. So I think coming to, I guess, your life in general. So um, you're an engineer who went into finance, and I think there's, especially in India, I feel, and I don't know if this is a global phenomenon, but definitely in India, most engineers, or at least a good number of them, seem to do everything else except engineering. And this is in no way to, like, sort of shame you or anything, but no, seriously, I think I really want to ask this question of, what has your journey with engineering been like? And I would imagine you were also a fairly good student, because I know you were even a part of, like, this team that went for a global competition where you designed drones and you placed third globally. You can talk more about that if you'd like. So I know you were like a fairly pretty, like, good student that way. And how did you go from engineering into finance? Were you never interested? Did you just lose interest? Did you just realize that, oh, this really isn't my calling? So what has that been like for you?
I think first of all, I just love in my life generally. I just love coming up with these one-liners that I stick to for the rest of my life. Because I'm like, okay, I have managed to summarize this in the best way possible. It's never gonna get better than this. I might as well just mug this up and move on, right? When people ask me about engineering in India and why I did that, the line I generally give is, I think in India you first do your engineering and then you decide what you want to do with life. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like an interim period where everything's sort of held in limbo and you just sort of like staring at the world, wondering, while staring back, waiting for you to make a decision. Oh, am I supposed to make a decision now? Or what the hell? So, I mean, engineering for me was that, because it's always a step towards, oh, let's keep our options open as much as possible. So when I was in school, I was like, science or commerce. I mean, if I take science, I can always pivot back to commerce. Science. Then some moron Indian uncle came up to me when I was like choosing a program for the engineering thing, and he was like, and I was like, what specialization do I choose? And for anyone who is a mechanical engineer, if they're listening and they're gonna resonate very hard with this, but that Indian uncle was like, "Arey, beta, choose mechanical engineering, but that is an evergreen field. It is evergreen." Yeah. Oh my god! Like,
What is that even supposed to mean?
I have no idea. Okay, but I follow the wisdom, and I'm like, huh, okay, fine. If I do mechanical engineering, it'll keep options open, and I can always do something after. Just
Okay.
kept sort of pursuing life like that. But I think ultimately, and even during college, I was getting to like 100 things, uh, none of which were studies. Okay, it was 101 things of extracurriculars, and somehow studies always took the backseat. I got like an 8 CGPA in my first semester, and it was all downhill from there. Never managed to get back up to the 8 point something ever. Yeah. So somehow I survived it. I had a few backlogs and stuff. I managed to clear those. Somehow I graduated and passed and got accepted into a company, and then somehow undergrad was nowhere in the picture again until the MBA application started. But that was a mistake that I wholly emotionally accept. That was a mistake.
No, but no, I mean, I'm glad you spoke about it, because this is something, at least I've noticed with a lot of people who take engineering and suddenly then they're not doing engineering.
That's very common. In fact, from my group of like 20, 30 friends from back in my undergrad, and VIT was a big place. So if you had a core group, it was 20, 30 people. We had like, what, one or two people who stuck with engineering. In fact, like one person who I know for sure has stuck with engineering.
Okay. No, it's the curious case of the Indian engineer who seems to do everything else except engineering. But no, kudos to the ones who do stick to it. It's great if you're genuinely interested and you're going for it. Please go for it. If you're doing it to keep your options open, sure, that's cool too. You could be like Samay and get into
Oh
finance.
my god. Don't be like me. I am the most stereotypical profile you could possibly meet. Like a cis male Indian engineer turned consultant. finance job.
I
It
mean,
doesn't get much easier than that.
but that's, I mean, you might be stereotypical in that sense, but how many of those men are also into poetry? Because I know that you used to write poetry, and you wrote like really well. So, I think let's talk about that. How did you get into poetry? How did you, get introduced? How did you start writing? What kind of, I guess, drew you in?
I think maybe it was some subconscious part of me screaming to somehow stand out, and I'm like, I should do something different from engineering. What is this life? I just channeled all my regret and dread and whatnot into words, and suddenly I realized that was also cliched because engineers in their first year generally do poetry.
Really? I
Oh
thought
yeah!
it was
Oh my
stand up.
god! Oh please! No. So I mean, stand up is a different type of a stereotype. Okay, so every person, regardless of whether they're an engineer or not, will have tried the new trend. Okay, so earlier guitar, then it became stars, and then it became stand up. So those are trends. So that's irrelevant. That's not related to your undergrad.
Hmm. Okay.
Engineers generally get into poetry. So I mean, I guess maybe in that truest sense, I am an engineer at heart.
I did not know this. I mean, stand up, yes, I was aware. But yeah, and even music, yes, I was aware. I didn't realize poetry was also, I thought poetry was a very niche thing. I mean, now, okay, it's a little more popularized with the whole spoken word scene in India and stuff, but I never imagined at that time I don't know. I thought it was a really niche thing, but this is interesting to know that it's quite common.
I think I think the community of poets in India is still blossoming and finding their foothold.
That's true.
Uh,
But when did you start writing poetry? Like, when did you get into it and like, I think I want to try writing poetry, or I think this is cool, or like I want to, try my hand at it.
I think I was first year of engineering, and it took me a while to build up my work, but I think that's because I generally took a long time with pieces. I had a lot of I had a few friends. In fact, one friend in particular who I'm thinking of right now, she used to pride herself in being able to just sit down and churn one out in the next 5 minutes. I can write 5 minutes. I mean, it was shit, but I mean, but it was very, how do I say it? Like her poems were so done. It felt like the Ekta Kapoor version of poetry, and like
Oh
just
my
didn't
god.
feel like effort was put into it.
Are
And
we
I know
referencing Hindi TV serials on this show now? Oh my
of
god.
course I reference everything. I have like a million references in each sentence.
Wonderful.
But it was like, so I mean, and that's something which has always personally irritated me, was that people take these kinds of and I don't want to say hobbies, but like I guess new interests very light, because this is a skill, and people before us have really refined it to an extent that we should pursue perfection in
True.
with right. And that's why I put that on a pause, because I don't have the time to do that. So when you say, why do you like, maybe why you're not writing poetry at once, because I want to come back to that when I do have the time and effort to contribute to this skill, because I want to get through a lot more poets. I want to see what's been done before, so that I can explore how people have done it and then take it forward from there. Honoring the ones that came before us who had pursued perfection in this skill also. So for me, it's that, and to see her saying that, oh, my poetry takes 5 minutes. That's just, do not relate to that. For me, it's like I used to write one poem in like 2 months, 2.5 months, and then I keep coming back to it every couple of days, seeing whether I was feeling it or not, and so that's why it took time for me to write and build up my work.
But yeah, I mean, okay, so since I imagine then you're more of a purist in the sense of like, okay, follow the technique, follow the craft, actually give it the effort. Would that be a correct way of stating?
No, not really. Because if you look at language, for example, and I think that's a good analogy to explore for this particular point. There are a lot of grammar purists who have and who have a natural irritation with some of the evolutions that manifest in the forms of slang or new structures of sentences. And I feel like every time has its own way of expressing itself. If you were to look at some of the latest slangs, then I don't have anything to offer as an example off the top of my head, but a lot of people would say that, oh, this is not right, this is not how it's done, but it's not for them to say anymore, right? Doesn't mean that we're not honoring how a skill should be done. As long as we know how it used to be done, and then we consciously look forward from there. Like, so it's important to know what was done before you move on and try out your own techniques and your own whatever. Like, there's a reason why you can actually specialize in this, get a degree in this. If you have never read Edgar Allan Poe or Walt Whitman, or just some of the greats who've really spent time in this zone, right? You'll never know what's already been done, what is cliched, what is not, what it means to truly hit the mark with the right line, right? And just that depth of thought, you'll never understand what it truly means to appreciate that until you've seen what's been done before, and then you can take it forward in whatever shape or form you want.
No, for sure. So then, I don't know if this is, I don't know if we can pivot into this, but then what is your opinion on, say, Insta poets, on the Instagram poetry community that has suddenly just cropped up? Especially, I think during lockdown, a lot of them have come up, including me. I'm not even going to deny it, but yeah.
I would not call you an Insta poet, please, okay? Because for me, an Insta poet phrase has a very particular meaning. I'm not going to call you an Insta poet and do you the disservice of devaluing work. And I'm just going to mention, somehow I feel like we're oscillating between a good question and a very controversial question, and you just like keep putting me on the spot, like, oh, how is the dating community? Oh, what do you think about Insta poets? Oh.
I'm just asking for your opinion, Samay. It's up to you if you want to give a controversial one or
Thanks, man.
a safe answer. I'm just a curious interviewer here asking questions.
I'm glad that my anxiety has gotten me to a point in life where I know how to choose the right words. Otherwise, I would be screwed. This question, I think Insta poet, for me.
Okay, but before you start, what is your classification of an Insta poet then? Because you just said I'm not one, but I literally just started an Instagram page during the pandemic to put out my poetry.
An Insta poet for me is the same as an Insta poet is to poetry what pop psychology is to psychology. It's not the real thing. It's a lazy imitation of what the skill is in its truest essence. I've seen your work. It's not Insta poetry. And when it's like it's kind of like talking about the depth of thought, the depth of feeling, the time given to structure each line, just the level of engagement that you would have to put out, quote unquote, a piece, right? And I feel like Insta poets sort of have a very low bar in what they consider poetry. Just like, and if I were to talk about pop psychology and I'd say something like, oh, if someone loves you, their ears will flap like an elephant's, something, like that's pop psychology. I mean, it's not even real psychology, but somehow it just sort of flips off the real field of study. Which in psychology is an actual thing. It's based on statistics and study of behavior in terms of how generally people respond to external stimuli, and then there's a whole physiological basis of how neurons are running in your brain and everything. And suddenly, you have this branch of people, influencers on Instagram who suddenly, quote unquote, again figured it out. They've cracked it, the code, okay, and then they're educating their following, saying that oh, if you want to walk into a room confident, kick the door down and then stare into everyone's faces as you step into the room, taken, and the moment someone pivots to you, that means aggression. That means this thing. That thing. It's just so stupid. They just make it up on the spot. There's no. So
there's no science.
Oh yeah, it's just not the real thing. And so if I talk about poetry, it's the same thing. It's like it's such a weak imitation of the what poetry actually is.
Right.
It's like, oh, in the rain I stand. With eyes, does he love me? Don't. That's it. That's the whole point.
Okay, oh my god. I must say, I think you're living to the stereotype of engineers going into stand-up comedy also now. You might as well start that career. as well. Just saying.
I'm telling you, I'm an engineer in its truest sense. In fact, I also play the guitar, little bit,
Oh my God.
and I was working on a startup at some point.
Oh my
Just saying.
So Samay is a quintessential engineer. At some point, if you see him like on a Forbes list years from now, you now know this is the to be successful, just be a quintessential engineer and you will make it.
I would never wish that upon my worst enemy. Never take engineering.
No, guys, if you really love the subject, please go ahead and take it. Don't listen to Samay. If it's something you're not into now, it's okay. It's fine.
Oh yeah, engineering is good. You should definitely pursue it.
Oh my God. But yeah.
But if I were to like quickly give a serious response to that, I mean, engineering is good. Just make sure you're getting into it with the right reasons.
That's true.
And you put more thought than just like a 5-minute conversation with an Indian uncle who's telling you, "Oh, beta, it's an evergreen field." Oh,
I think that's my favorite line from this interview. Mechanical engineering is evergreen. I really want to know what this means, but it's amazing. It's incredible. Lovely. But yeah, I think we are now coming to the end of this interview. Last 2 questions. So first off, what are your aspirations in life? Can be creative, can be anything you're looking forward to in general. So yeah, what are you looking forward to?
I think at the moment, the end of my university program, it's been super overwhelming, and I know the university has been hounding me to decide what I want to do with my life. I have no idea. At the moment, I just want this to end because the MBA is just death. Oh my god, MBA is like I thought people used to tell me MBA is overwhelming. I thought they were all losers who couldn't keep up with it, and I can handle it because I'm all that. Oh my god. Oh, I was put in my place by this program. So like at the moment, the university has managed to make me say that I want to move into some overlap of finance and strategy, probably looking at something related to M&A, which is mergers and acquisitions, so a bit of deal strategy, maybe IB, which is investment banking, maybe PE firms or VC firms, if I can make it, again, which if someone wants to know, that's private equity funds and venture capital funds. So I mean, if I can crack that, because that's very hard networking wise to be able to reach out to that community, is very closed off. But if I can get that, maybe that, otherwise something else, we'll see. But it's mostly something to do with finance and strategy.
That's cool. That's nice. And last question. What is a piece of advice you'd like to share? You wish people knew. It could be creative, can be a life lesson you've learned in general. What is a piece of advice you'd like to share?
Okay. So I mean, I'm like I'm like an 80-year-old man in a 20-year-old body. Okay, I don't walk like it. I walk like an 80-year-old man, but that's different. Like, I have that advice to give, but I boiled it down to this one thing, which I think I really say to people a lot, right? Which is never settle. Okay, and building on that, I just want to clarify that striving for more in life doesn't necessarily mean or it doesn't have to indicate some sort of dissatisfaction or unhappiness. You can still be satisfied in life. You can still be content. You can still be happy in the moment. But that doesn't mean that you just stop trying. Like, you have to put in effort, like 100%. I see a lot of people around me not giving their best in every given moment, and they're like, "Oh, why should I try? Why should I do anything at all?" I'm like, it's a very slippery slope to be on. Right? And if I am remembering this quote properly, the function of man is to live, not to exist.
Interesting. That's a very relevant. No, I think that's very relevant, especially today. Much needed. And on that motivational, oh my God, Samay's going to be a motivational speaker, which is another engineer quality. But no, on that motivational note, we have now come to the end of this interview. Thank you so much for being a part of this show, Samay. It was so nice talking to you after so long. I think it was a really fun recording. I hope our listeners enjoy it too.
Oh, pleasure to be here. This is a lot of fun, yeah.
Thank you. So that was my conversation with Samay Soni. I don't think I've laughed this much on an interview yet, but I really hope you had a good time tuning in. I'm definitely going to look into the D&D game and community more now. And for all you engineers out there, let me know if this conversation was relatable. Closing this episode with a message from Samay. I hope you enjoyed the show, and I'll see you next week with a new guest and a new chronicle to share. Talk soon!
Okay, this is the outro part of the interview. I'm supposed to talk to you about my work in general and what I've been spending my time doing. I don't want to mention my poetry at this point because that's been on hold for now, and that's at the back of my mind at the moment, but I have to revisit that afterwards some other point in my life. At the moment, I think what's forefront for me is D&D, and I'm trying to hone my skill as a game master, not just in Dungeons and Dragons, but I'm exploring other tabletop gaming structures. And I think the biggest part of being able to do that is when I can connect with new people and run games for them. So for anyone listening, just if you want to play a game, if you want to check out D&D, I'm always open to new people. People I've never met before, it's completely fine. My table is always open for you guys. Just connect with Sangeeta, reach out to her and ask her to connect you with me, and I'll be happy to run a game for you and your friends. I've already done that for a couple of people around the world. I've been putting out free game invites for random people on Twitter, and a lot of people connected with me. I ran some games for like some people in New Zealand, some people in UK. It's a very active community to be a part of, or to at least come across, even if it's temporarily, just to check it out at least once in your life. But it's definitely going to be an amazing experience. That's something that I can definitely offer. So looking forward to connecting with you guys.